Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Man, I've got a lot of incredible news to cover today, as we do every day, but it does literally, as you know, get crazier by the minute. But I sent one of my crew members up to Dallas to poke around for the 50th anniversary of the JFK assassination and just to find out the lay of the land and what's going on. They're actually planning on blocking, not just right around Dealey Plaza, that's the official story on the city website and on the Dallas Morning News. They're planning to block it about 4 or 5 blocks down and basically shut down a third of downtown Dallas. And they tried to claim, the city tried to claim no bullhorns, no demonstrations in the city, period, and declared there was no First Amendment. A lawsuit was filed and an injunction was handed down. And now much of what the city has been trying to do has been struck down by a court. But I'm here to tell you they will still try to violate the First Amendment on that day. So because they're doing that, I've got a lot of legal, lawful, constitutional things I'm going to do in the face of the tyrants. We're going to print up 100,000 flyers, and I'm going to be in Dallas next Wednesday night, and I will announce a location on Infowars.com Wednesday night. You will check it on your smartphones if you choose to take this mission, and you will put up the flyers in legal and lawful areas Thursday. They will pull them down from legal and lawful areas, public commons areas where other handbills are posted. Under common law, they'll only tear ours down and claim it's illegal. We will then hit them again Friday and again Saturday. They're going to have the entire international media there. Billions will be tuning in, and they want to try to sell the fraud that a lone unicorn fired a bullet out of a school book building through 2 trees and hit the president. And then that the magic Lucky Charms Easter Bunny bullet was able to do all this. We're not there to debate that. We've won 90+% of Americans in major polls, even higher with Europeans, know the government killed Kennedy, a shadow element of the government. We've had the lawyers go public, the mistresses go public, the hitman commander go public, E. Howard Hunt. On and on and on and on. And by the way, he was fingered as the commander of the operation on the ground captain, the quarterback, you could say, of the big event. Sued Liberty Lobby and lost. The court found there was evidence E. Howard Hunt was there, and he later admitted, I was there backbenching and running the big event. We were going to kill him in Miami and then Chicago, but that Secret Service agent blew the whistle in Chicago. So Dallas was the place. Of course, Texas always gets the job done. But the point is that, and I'm not proud of us down here, but we do seem to do what we say we're going to do, historically. And the whole point is that the main event happened in Dallas 50 years ago. And listen, they could be saying they're shutting the city of Dallas down, there's no free speech for gay people, and I would probably go up there and demonstrate. I mean, they could be saying they're having an anti-dog rally or an anti-Christian rally or whatever, and that no one was allowed to come and protest it. I would show up. I don't care if it's a group I disagreed with. If they were trying to take the Black Panthers' rights away, I'd be up there against it. If they were trying to take the Ku Klux Klan's right to speak away, I would support it. Because if they can take theirs, they can take mine, folks. They've already butchered the 4th Amendment, 10th Amendment, 2nd Amendment. But it really is hitting me how big a deal this is. So a lot of my crew is going to be down there. I'm going to be there. And you know, it's my hometown. I was born less than a mile from where Kennedy got his head blown off. And I was born in the hospital right next to Parkland. There's 2 of them right there. The point is that I'm going back to my hometown to let folks know the First Amendment exists, come hell or high water, and we are now going to hand out 100,000 flyers and a lot more. Stay with us.
Strategic relocation is a
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this Friday worldwide transmission. It is the 15th day of November, 2013. 7 days from now, I will be broadcasting live from outside Dealey Plaza. Because no one who doesn't agree with the official story, including Dan Rather, I've read, are allowed into the kill zone. The people that killed Kennedy and the power structure that killed Kennedy to bring in the Black Ops CIA offshore banking coup d'etat are going to be there trying to prop up the collapsed facade that is the official story of what happened to John F. Kennedy in 1963 on November 22nd. We've won the info war when it comes to exposing that it was a black op. The average poll is 90% or higher, scientific poll, believing that there is a conspiracy and a cover-up. Congress, back in the 70s, found with a 99% certainty, that's the quote, that it was a multi-shooter conspiracy from the acoustics and witnesses to kill John F. Kennedy. Now, you know that the Warren Commission covered it up years before and was filled with people that were enemies of Kennedy. And we know they killed his brother, and the police department report says that. Sirhan got his arm pinned. None of the shots went into John F. Kennedy's brother, Bobby Kennedy. The list goes on and on. The establishment assassinated two people that actually tried to be real presidents. One who became president, was a real president, certainly not perfect. I don't romanticize him, had his own gangster tendencies. The other one tried to become president and said that once he did, he was going to go after him. And that's all on record. They think you're stupid, just like they'd think you wouldn't read Obamacare and they could get it through. And folks didn't read it, but now they know it's a screw job. It's on record how they killed Kennedy, and it's on record how they killed his brother, the younger Kennedy. But that's not why I'm going to Dallas next Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, because they're going to continue the propaganda the next day. They would never give any other group the Dealey Plaza Park. They would never give a historical group, a research group, a permit to hold a demonstration or rally there. And they have the school book building as a giant propaganda center of lies and deception and fraud. They've rolled out everyone from Bugliosi to Tom Hanks to try to prop up the collapsed Humpty Dumpty that's in a million pieces. And all the king's horses and all the king's men and all the propagandists can't put their asinine lie back together again. And then they march the patsy out. Lee Harvey Oswald, I'm a patsy, they're setting me up. Don't let them kill me. March him outside. And then they marched the Marine out to kill him. Another Timothy McVeigh, literally. A military officer believing he was deep cover infiltration of communists in plots to kill Kennedy so they could set him up and blame communists if they wanted to. But then they used the threat against the Russians for concessions that we're going to set you up with our double agent that we sent to Russia and allowed back in, run by white Russians here in the U.S. That doesn't mean white people, folks. No, every time I talk about black slavery, white slavery, people don't even know the different types of it. Nothing to do with black people or white people. Same thing with white Russians. It just means pro-czarist. But the issue is that if you know the history, they 100% set him up and then killed him publicly. He was the patsy, part of the drill. And the moral of the story is, if you're a Marine and they want you to simulate going to kill the president, or they want you to infiltrate some kind of patriot group that they claim's terrorist, the patriot group's really a bunch of feds planning something, and they're going to set you up. Just like in Mark Wahlberg's excellent film, that at the end of the film, they basically admit is a composite of what happened with Kennedy, but then repeated in modern times with an example of a criminal combined government running things. That film, The Shooter, or is it just Shooter? should be required viewing. Shooter, just Shooter. Should be required viewing because it explains exactly how they do these things, okay? And I know that a lot of Hollywood scriptwriters and producers, back when I would still go out to Los Angeles, interviewed me and claimed they wanted me to have a writing credit on things. I even sat down multiple times with major directors and producers and writers with scripts basically like The Shooter. Now that doesn't mean my ideas are actually in The Shooter. Hollywood's fully awake to this kind of stuff. And they're not just doing revelation of the method or externalization of the hierarchy as a propaganda ploy. They know what's going on. And they're kept on a very short leash by the big agency owners. They're kept on a very short leash by the heads of the studios. But I saw a bunch of scripts very similar to Shooter, except one of them had Sigourney Weaver in it playing the part of somebody in the White House shut up in a false flag. Well, Sigourney Weaver was the president in it. But then there was another script, and I don't mean just scripts floating around Hollywood. I mean high-level meetings with, like, major A-list directors. You know, sitting there in, like, 5-hour meetings, picking my brain about the New World Order, assassination, black ops, false flags. And then I have seen some of those same names make different movies than they were looking at making, but very similar. It's just strange. And what do I get out of it? Nothing, except, you know, Hollywood making the, you know, wanted child kidnapper named Alex Jones in the new movie. I mean, it's just all sorts of nice little things they do. The point is that I meander around. I start talking about one subject and it leads into another and then leads into another because, believe me, this is teleprompter-free radio, teleprompter-free television. Now, let me just stop for a minute and kind of reset here and tell you what's coming up today. Let me just do this because I hardly ever get to the video clips and the audio clips. This is the type of stuff I have just today in my video clips. Oprah Winfrey, BBC, many disrespect Obama because he's black. Not because he is a criminal frontman. No, actually, a lot of folks are embarrassed and upset at the system using a part black guy to sell all this fraud on the backs of people, hoping for reconciliation and for a colorblind society. What they are is totally betraying people's trust and goodwill, and then calling people that wake up racist when they're being run over by Team Obama and his legion of criminals. CBS's Major Garrett confronts Obama on broken keep your plan promises. There's a new interview where he gets confronted. Congressman exposes DHS buildup for civil unrest. Secret police force, not a conspiracy. No, it's in the bill. So is paying for implanted microchips in the citizenry. I mean, I've scanned over the bill, folks. It is 10,000 pages plus of addendums and riders, 3,000 plus pages of the actual bill. And the stuff in there is so bad in Obamacare that you're reading it and you're like, this allows the insurance companies to quadruple within 3 years of it being implemented, 2016. It allows them to quadruple the average, and it's going to double the first year. And you're reading this, and you're going, there's no way. You go, no, the public will put up with that, actually. They don't want to be racist, so they'll do it. I mean, it's like literally throw your child in a wood chipper, you're racist, and the average trendy would do it. It continues. Hillary Clinton in 2007 says you can keep your plan if you like it, the same bull. It's just the same quarterbacking from the globalists. They're just front puppets that basically broadcast and repeat the globalist message. McAfee's come out and said that the site is executing a denial of service attack on itself. That's actually what Mike Adams, who's a really good programmer, said first. The first day it wasn't working, the first day it came out, he said, this is a setup. And a bunch of other programmers have said that now, too. Yeah. No, that's the point. It's not meant to work, folks. So it all becomes, oh, you can't get the free thing because it's broken. Oh, that's all right. Oh, you meant well. The site is broken. Spying on you works 100% perfectly, integrating everything you do into one government database, but they can't let you go into an exchange where it's like basically eBay and you just can pick, different. I mean, it's just total. Watch. You'll never get your free health care until it's death care. And you will get that finally, but you're going to pay private corporations thousands of dollars per pill they make you swallow, okay, when they're done. And you're going to love it. I get it. That's why they're going to take your bank accounts, lower the wages, break the country, deindustrialize, shut everything down, force inoculate your kids. Take your 11-year-old to have an abortion without you giving authorization because they know sheep suckers when they see it. These gangsters know people that are done, like a hog that's been hauled up by its ankles and had its throat slit. You bled out. It's time to smoke you. And when you're and you'll be sitting there on that smoker burning, and when it comes time, you'll say, "I'm done on this side. Please flip me." And they'll say, "Shut up, terrorist." Karate chop you right in the throat, and gurgling through blood, you will thank them as they gouge your eyeballs out with big red pokers. Anyways, we got a bunch of news coming up. Sorry, I'm so extreme. I don't like being robbed and financially raped. I should roll over to take it. Alex Jones here, and I want to tell you about
I'm a highwayman again.
It's all about not caring, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think this song, and I've actually talked to Willie about it, is so much about, and he agreed with me, me and Willie were talking over over a chessboard. But the whole point is that I was saying, is that song about reincarnation, or is it more about how adventurism and humanity could continue on to the stars and how others will live on and then our genetics live on into the future as long as there is trailblazing and adventure? And he said, I can't copy the way Willie Nelson talks, but he's like, I think that's exactly what it's saying. I think that's exactly what we meant. Because I play that song sometimes, or play the intro of it, the first 30 seconds or so. I've never played the whole song or a large chunk of it. And people are like, what's he doing playing that reincarnation stuff on there? Well, I am the genetic reincarnation of all my ancestors. That's pretty heavy right there. Folks ever think about that? And that's why I don't like cheating other people and going after other people. I mean, we're all related to each other one way or another. I don't care where you are in the world. You trace your roots back to Africa. And it's just literally, and it doesn't matter if people are like rats. Doesn't matter if they're low down and evil. Doesn't matter. When somebody's trying to crush you, you got to go ahead and crush them. But it doesn't mean I enjoy it. It doesn't mean that, there's vipers and scum out there that have to be dealt with. And, good people deal with them. I think one of, good folks' biggest problem is we don't tend to stand up for ourselves. We need to. But we also need to build up and hold up the innocent. That's our number one job, is to come to the aid of people that are having their rights violated, people that are being overrun, because that's how we all stand together, or we hang separate. And I haven't even gotten to the news. This is a short segment. I'm going to control myself and be well-behaved, and I'm going to come back focused. Problem is, I go over all this news at night in the morning, and then once I get here, and then it's kind of like, man, do I need to really tell everybody this stuff? Because let me tell you, it is big, and it is bad, and it is stinky. But I guess it's kind of like lancing a big boil that's on the bottom of your foot or something, where you step on a rusty nail, and then it's hurting really bad, and it swells up, and you hadn't gone to the doctor, and you hadn't told your parents about it. You get home from school, and it's all swole up and red and hurting, and you just go get a knife out of the block, and you heat it up red hot and just stick it in there, and all that pus comes out of there, and it feels so good. And I think that's kind of, did that once when I was a kid. I think that's kind of what this comes down to. And I didn't know why I knew how to cauterize the wound, but see, all the genetic information is right there. I've got everything my ancestors had right there, combat ready. We'll be right back.
We're on the march.
How about counter-revolution against tyranny. There is a revolution of oppression. And I personally am not going to stand here idly by and let our society be engineered into one based on fraud and deceit instead of innovation, honor, and enlightenment. It's very, very simple. And folks out there need to decide historically what decision we want to make now in the present going in to the breach, which is the future. We're in a forward-leaning time warp, ladies and gentlemen. If you look at the quantum mechanics, the rush of the universe goes by us, through us, and we flow with it. And when you realize that, it's such a joke to be obsessed with the pomp and circumstance and red carpets and all of the fake status garbage, which means absolutely nothing if it is projected by the establishment, because the establishment wants you to be obsessed with issues of little or no significance so that they can rule the future destiny of this species and steer us into oblivion, because that is their great goal. Now, let me just do this. Let me just do this here on air. There's so much I want to get to. And I mean, that's the problem. I get in here and I look at all this news, and it is just too insane to even, sometimes even try to get into it. It makes my head spin. We're going to get into the latest on Obamacare. Big economic developments, just all sorts of internet freedom takeovers. It's all coming up here today, and expanding on it. Just briefly, I wanted to just remind listeners that, well, we have a lot of important news I want to get to here, but I wanted to remind listeners here today that the reason I'm promoting atomic proprietary iodine is because I did the research from the mainline medical studies, the nutritionists, you name it, you've heard many of them here on the air, that iodine and the pure forms of iodine are one of the biggest secrets that the establishment is keeping from the public. And it's hidden in plain view. I mean, just as they put the dangerous halogens, the fluorine, all the rest of the garbage in the water and the food that we don't need and that's so toxic and bad, they then keep the good iodine out of the food supply knowingly. Back before our government was eugenics run, it was only partially eugenics run from the 20s into the 50s, they basically mandated the food producers to put iodine in the food. And then, of course, I have the studies right here. I could show TV viewers how adding iodine to salt resulted in a decade's worth of IQ gains for the United States, a 15-point increase, and that's in major studies. That's from Business Insider. Again, here's the Harvard study from Reuters. Harvard study confirms fluoride reduces children's IQ. So they put something in the water that reduces IQ on record at the level they're putting it in, and then they remove the thing that your brain's got to have. I mean, there's all the studies about chromosomal disorders, retardation. I mean, there's a whole bunch of disorders directly linked to iodine deficiency in pregnant women. And they don't tell women they need iodine, period. So, yes, I promote things that fund our operation and make us strong and be able to expand. With things that I believe in and that I know are really good. And so we did get more of this in. They did expand the size of the laboratory where this is produced, and this is the best iodine that I could find for myself and my family. It's unbonded. It's pure. It's InfoWars Life Survival Shield, available at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com, or link through at InfoWarsStore.com. It also has a link to it there. Then we also have what they say is an organic form of nascent iodine. We're very close to it. It's still partially bound, but very good for you, I'm told, from all the research. And I certainly feel it. The Modophyllin Southern Hemisphere brown seaweed. So that's available at InfoWarsLife.com and InfoWarsStore.com as well. And I don't know how long we can run this special. It's the biggest special we've ever done. 20% off right now on ProPure, Pro One, the entire family of systems. And again, I'm making, I think, $2 on the little pitchers because there's already hardly any markup in those. So when I go 20% on that, it just gets rid. The additional 10% off that we do on the regular 10%, literally, that is right at a loss leader. So there you go, InfoWarsStore.com, or call toll-free 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139. Or you can simply, again, go to InfoWars.com and link through there. Okay, let's just read some of the headlines here that are up on InfoWars.com. Let's just do this. Report, Obama is an actor trained by Harry Lennox. And that was said on a newsroom floor at Fox TV studios in Chicago in front of 6 people at least. 4 of them that work for Eric Mueller and 2 of them that were other guests. And he literally trashed him for 10 minutes, they said. They said it was unbelievable. In fact, Mancow didn't even say some of it on air because he said he didn't want to. Lennox didn't say don't talk about it, but he said he just wasn't going to say it. Put it to you that way. He practically lived with him, was the quote. Let's continue here. Janet Yellen, the new Fed boss, is pumping up the bubble machine. You thought QE Unlimited was bad? Get ready. And, of course, they had a high-level Fed officer go public 2 days ago. We covered it here on air, and he said that he apologizes. This is the greatest transfer of wealth in U.S. history and a robbery of our children's future. It's a criminal takeover by foreign banks. He now concurs with us. See, once you speak the great truth aloud, it begins to echo around forever. CIA looking at your financial transactions. Kurt Nimmo's written about that. The New York Times has a whitewash article out. Congressman warns of Obamacare security, secret security force. And we're going to play that clip. We have it queued up coming up here in just a moment. Also, Obamacare fix affirms Obama as absolute dictator with power to change the laws as he pleases. And this is what Bongino, the famous Secret Service, Dan Bongino, talks about, and he's coming on in the 3rd hour. Our story last week from Infowars.com went viral via DrudgeReport.com. Was the biggest story we ever put out. We had more traffic off of that one story than anything else ever, for whatever reason, at Infowars.com, because he said, you have no idea how bad Obama really is. I've signed national security agreements and can't tell you, but you have no idea. It's far worse than you think. Well, I happen to know from another Secret Service source inside the White House, and I hate even talking about stuff like this, folks. It's just dangerous. And it's nothing that could even get me killed. It's just because they don't tell me anything specific. It's just, oh, my God, you're absolutely right. I can't. I've got to get out of here. I got to get a transfer. Oh, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. God help America. Keep warning them. And then I talked to another Secret Service agent over the phone. I was with a famous person who's friends with him, put me on. He was showing me pictures with him and stuff. And this person I know has been to the White House quite a bit. And the guy started basically crying on the telephone to me. Okay, it's bad enough, folks, that the Secret Service is crying. Crying. You know, I know why the public wants to sit there and say I'm full of it and, oh, it's an exaggeration. Because you know what? I wish every day I was a liar. I wish it wasn't this bad. I wish I wasn't right. Because let me tell you, folks, I cry sometimes. And I'm the type of guy that's had, like, compound fractures and stuff and didn't cry. I get mad when I get hurt. This is a spiritual thing. When you realize and you look at your children and they're innocent and they're good and you realize that the evil's hanging over them, involuntarily, I don't like start retching and crying. Tears just start pouring out my eyes. They just start coming out because my brain is grieving so hard, folks, harder than when family members have died. In fact, if I start talking about it, my eyes start watering it's beyond. I used to get chills up and down my spine. I don't really get that anymore. I get it sometimes. I start literally tearing up, ladies and gentlemen, because when you realize that we're in the hands of evil. See, there it goes right there. See, I got all this news, and I can't even read it. It's just like, what is the point? What, add more to just all the hellish stuff that's going on and how much trouble we're in? And the sadness that we have to go through this and put up with this? I mean, this is ridiculous. And that's where the pain gives way to anger, because the anger is basically a defense mechanism. I do need to take a vacation, I'll tell you right now. But there is no taking a vacation when all this is going on, because I can't turn it off anyways. In the face of this tyranny, we must all stand up and speak out and tell the truth. And I realize I am pre-grieving. It's like a pre-nostalgia, but an anti-nostalgia. Like I realize the nightmare, almost like a vision. I've already seen the carnage, seen that my understanding has been corrected to this point. It's not hard. The globalists brag what they're going to do. And it's like, wow, this nightmare is coming true. They really are going to do it. They really are going to break up our families, shoot us all up with deadly vaccines that kill even more of us. They really are poisoning the food and water. They really are using all of our energy. Look at the light posts and the buildings and the helicopters and the weapons and the aircraft carriers and the NSA bases and the power grids and all this stuff that our tax money and our energy and our work paid for. We built this. And now they're not building any of that anymore. All they're building is select infrastructure they own and control that's given to select offshore Spanish and Portuguese and British and Dutch and globalist royalty, owned companies. And they're transferring all our wealth and the infrastructure to them to control us and dominate us and crush us through a high-tech siege. And our energy is being used to build this hellish thing. And then I see Arrested Development, young thuggish cops strutting around, bugging their eyes out at people. And it's just like, whoa, I don't even hate them or dislike them. I know who they are. I know more about them than they do. I know more about them than their mama does. And I just look at them. I mean, I know more about their psychology and what's been done to them, because they're not the same person their mama took care of. And they're just programmed, and I've seen them. We've seen them through history over and over again, and it's like Groundhog Day, ladies and gentlemen, to know what we're going to go through over and over again. And it's just like, really, 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 you're that big a failure. And I'm not singling out the police. They just are where the rubber meets the road. It's the whole system, folks. It's coming down by design. Let's go to this congressman from Texas. He's been on the show before. He's a really good guy, Louis Gohmert. The story is up on Infowars.com. It's Congressman warns of Obamacare secret security force. We got two big guests coming up today. We have a real expert. I read about this guy before, but I heard him on Dr. Stan Monteith's show like 2 nights ago while I was driving around Austin. And I've read all of Brzezinski's books. I've studied Trilateral Commission quarterly reports I had to send off and pay for years ago. I know their plan. And I was learning stuff from this guy. I knew everything he was saying was accurate. And then to a point, I went and looked up some of the stuff I didn't know and found out it was accurate. I mean, he's got their plan down, okay? This guy went to the National Archives in Canada. That's how you got to do this stuff. You got to send off and pay for it or go to the archives, or big law libraries will have it, like UT Library has a lot of it. And he sat there and spent years reading it all. And, man, they are going to sterilize everybody. They're going to break up all our families. They're going to put us in forced labor camps. I mean, that's just unbelievable. It's all Carnegie, Rockefeller, Ford Foundation, on record battle plan. I mean, on record, you could convict them all right now. Nuremberg trials for their plan and what they've already carried out so far. So Gohmert has come out. Congressman warns of Obamacare secret security force. It's a 7-minute clip up on the site where he goes through what's in the legislation, and then he's setting up a national security force, and that's what they're doing. This enacts it because it's paramilitary when you read the fine print. And then they hire former Blackwater XC types as the security force to guard the federal buildings, but they're not a security force. They're an offensive force, totally outside government. Let's play a few minutes of this clip.
New efforts in Wisconsin and in that area, it makes no sense whatsoever. So I'm just giving all this background to listeners so they can understand that hopefully they should be as skeptical of Homeland Security and the Justice Department as I think you and I are.
Well, I agree with you, and all the things that you've mentioned, we've talked about a lot on the show as well, Ella Bieri and all the rest that you've talked about, all very, very important things. But, you know, we've had a lot of people out there saying they're taking note of the 1.6 billion rounds of, in part, hollow point ammunition, which is to kill people, not for target practice. You've had...
Most ranges don't let you use hollow points on their range.
Right.
Destructive of the target. So that made no sense. And I have asked folks on Homeland Security if they're, you know, what is the reason for that? And I'm talking about the Committee on Homeland Security in the House. And they seem satisfied. Well, apparently, you know, they just have to get this much ammunition when they're buying for all the different departments. But, Janet, that does not make sense. And I don't have answers on what they're doing.
We're going to come back and play the rest of it, but skip ahead because we have enough time to play it. Go to the clip where he talks about the conspiracy. Here's that clip.
Actually, Christians are looking at this and saying, gee, I hope my mind isn't going in a direction that's actually seeming that it's going. And people don't want to think that way and seem conspiratorial, but it's odd that they will not answer questions.
Well, but you get back to reporters, I think the reason that they're afraid to ask the tough questions about these kind of things is that they're afraid that all of their colleagues will immediately turn on them and saying, oh, you're another right-wing nut, you know, you see a conspiracy everywhere. I don't see conspiracies everywhere. I just see really stupid moves being made by this administration.
That's right. So what they're doing is power grabbing. History is repeating itself. The full interview, there's even more, is up on Infowars.com. We're going to come back into the latest on Obamacare, my friends. Coming up at the start of the next hour, we're going to have expert on the technocracy, the technotronic age, the real globalist plan of total systematic collectivism towards population reduction. He's going to be joining us via video Skype for TV viewers. You can go to Infowars.com/show and see the free feeds or see them archived in high def at Prisonplanet.tv. But radio listeners will be able to tune in as well. That is in the second hour. If you want to know how things really work, you know, folks can't just decide to say, oh, that's their opinion. You're going to hear documentation, where they say it, when they said it, of their plan. Any of you could go read Brzezinski's books where he admits the government deals the drugs, the government runs the organized crime, the government funds communism and fascism. You can read Carol Quigley's book, the head of Georgetown Political Science, Bill Clinton's mentor, wrote an 1,100-pager saying all that. I've read it, most of it. I've scanned it. We sell it. And it's just all right there. And you know, you're a dumb animal and you deserve to die. And he publishes books saying that. And he runs things. So, you know, I was told by an insider yesterday about making a film with about a billionaire, and he was working on the film. And the billionaire, well-known billionaire, was at a big sports team event that he owns and was actually talking with some other billionaires about, yeah, the slaves don't need to, you know that we're doing this to control them. It all needs to be about how we have the high ground, and we're here to protect them. And we're here to, do all this for their safety. This was like 5 years ago. We're going to put chips in all of the medicines and things to make sure they're taking them so we can control them. We're going to have retina scanners everywhere for them to buy and sell. And we're going to have a total police state in place for their own good. And then he would sit there laughing about everybody. And I've been around this kind of stuff, folks. I mean, this is a predatory, conscious plan against you and your family. And the sooner you figure that out, the better. Then I was talking to another insider who'd multiple times been around a bunch of Masons and how they would just talk so much trash about me when George Washington, the Mason, would literally spit on you. I mean, I'm not saying all Masons are evil. I'm not saying all branches of it go back to something bad. I know the real history of it. I've forgotten more about Masonry than most Masons know. It's all right there in the history books. I've had a lot of family that were high-level Masons. I don't hide that fact. And you know what they told my dad? You know what they told me? Don't ever be a Mason when you get asked. Don't ever be part of it. Is that understood? I've had family that have been 33rd degree Masons. What do you think they discovered? I've got family on both sides involved in the founding of Texas. Lone Star State, you think I know about Masons? You know how many family aprons I've got in storage, or my dad does? The point is that what Masonry is today is something promoting the New World Order. You guys aren't doing anything to stop tyranny. So you want to talk about how I'm bad and I'm making all this stuff up? I'm not making any of this up. None of it. None of it. You hear that, Masons? I want to have a show someday where for 3 hours I let the Masons call in. And I will quiz them to see if they really are Masons. And just tell me how I'm wrong about all this stuff. Let me ask Masons something. Would George Washington like what you do, what you stand for? You're all a bunch of nobodies on power trips because you're part of an organization that was taken over a long time ago. To fix Obamacare, Congress will have to stand down and allow Obama to operate outside of the courts, outside of law, outside of Congress. And of course, this is the big test now because the Republican leadership, helped write this with foreign banks, so they want it to go through. That's their orders. And so now Obama will be like, hey, let me do what I want outside of law, and I'll give you the free health care. And then, of course, you'll let him be dictator. It'll get even worse, as I keep telling you for years and months, specifically. And then it'll just get worse and worse and worse. It's kind of like if you stuck your arm in something and something bit your finger off, you wouldn't stick your arm back in there. So you stick your arm in the Obamacare hole, and you pull it out, and 3 fingers have been chewed off. And then you hear a voice going, I love you. Stick your hand back in. I'll give you a bag of gold if you stick your hand back in. Come to healthcare.gov. Oh, I love you. I love you. I love you. And you go, well, it sounds sweet. It sounds like Harry Lennox, who now has gone public to media in Chicago, that he actually for years was there and trained Obama. And then you watch and listen to Lennox, and you go back to videos of him years ago. He's Obama. He's the guy. He's the American. He's the smooth-talking guy, the Shakespearean actor who trained Obozo. And we know Obama. I shouldn't call him Obozo, but I like to denigrate their puppets. He's actually a viciously successful puppet who savagely stabbed America in the back 1,000 times, and we're bleeding out right now. So he's actually the great destroyer, the most successful New World Order agent ever against the Republic. Benedict Arnold rolls in his grave with jealousy, flopping end over end, foaming at the mouth with just absolute rapine. Let's get into some of the Obozo care news. They're now reporting that the fix could make it worse. That's what McClatchy's saying. Of course, always going to make it worse. That's the plan. More navigators exposed in new video with the Veritas Project, where they're telling them to engage in fraud and cheat everyone and lie on everything and commit felonies, and that they work for the Democratic Party and that they're going to take over the country. And no mainstream media is picking that up because, again, this is the age of total criminality. GOP warns of constitutional crisis, but they're controlled at the top, so don't expect anything. Democratic representative says they haven't seen this much panic since 9/11. Yeah, that was a staged event, too. And the New York Times says there's a crisis in confidence in Obozo. Well, it doesn't matter. He's not facing re-election, so he's designed the abomination, the O-Vomit. That's their best name because they're vomiting out their hatred on us with Obama. Like boiling oil dumped off a castle wall on our heads. So we're saying it's a crisis in confidence. And then that will run everyone to the self-propelled Baron Harkonnen, Jabba the Hutt's illegitimate son, the governor of New Jersey, that will run everyone to him and his suspensor belts. And then, of course, he'll come in and double down the savagery, and all the neocon talk show hosts will defend him and say you're liberal if you don't like him, and that I'm a commie because I don't like Christie, and all the rest of it. I mean, this is how they operate. This is how the game works. And if America puts up with this again, I know there's electronic voting machines and a lot of fraud, but it doesn't matter. We should be out in the streets by the millions demanding the resignation of the abomination, vomitus, maximus, ludus, brutus, tertus. I mean, I was trying to come up with names in Latin here, a little bit of pig Latin here, to describe what they're doing to us, ladies and gentlemen. But I got to have some gallows humor sometimes. I have really trouble dealing with this. Just watching the total criminal takeover and them dancing around on the grave of America, shutting everything down. Restaurants I used to go to are shut down or half empty. Movie theaters are empty. Economy's imploding. I live in the best city in the country, and I can see the rot setting in everywhere while globalists fly around above me going to the F1 race this weekend that taxpayers paid for as billionaires suck me dry, giggling at me. What? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this Friday edition. We are now into the second hour. We have a guest that we're getting hooked up on Skype right now who's an expert on the technocracy age, the governing system that the globalists actually describe themselves as being adherents of. And this is a system they're trying to set up, so that's coming up here in a few minutes. First off, Congressman McDermott is saying he hasn't seen this much panic on the floor since 9/11. House Democrat compares congressional panic over Obamacare to worst terror attack in nation's history. Well, yeah, that manufactured globalist event killed 3,000 people and was tragic, and then thousands more from the deadly dust the government lied about. But this is going to kill the economy and the engine of prosperity and kill millions through death panels and ration care on record. I mean, we knew what was in the bill. We knew the plan. And now get ready. Get ready to become impoverished. Because they want you impoverished under Cloward and Piven to give up on the free market, blame capitalism for crony fraud capitalism that they brought in, where they socialize our lives, but then transfer the wealth to themselves. So that is just some of the news. Also, CBS is reporting that the TSA agent officer bled for 33 minutes in LAX shooting. Airports are supposedly the most secure places in the country, except for like military bases. And then this guy bled for 33 minutes while they got the SWAT team all suited up and ready. Again, it's the culture of just worrying about their safety all day until the point is nobody's safe because a nanny state can do nothing but make you domesticated. A nanny state can do nothing except basically turn you into a sheep. It's so simple. And then we've got the other news up on Infowars.com and Prisonplanet.com. Reports out Obama is an actor trained by Harry Lennox. This is a big deal if this goes viral. That Harry Lennox is saying, and it's on record, they were friends for about 17 years, and that they had done work together, and they go to each other's houses, and now he reportedly says Obama's horrible and is a rat. That's another quote. A rat, and that Obama was trained by him to be presidential. And then, of course, if you watch Harry Lennox do an interview, it's Obama, the same cadence, the same voice. Obama is copying Lennox, or Lennox is copying Obama. It's like the same guy. And I believe Lennox over Obama. So that article and the source on that is up on Infowars.com right now. Also, again, the Federal Reserve is planning to accelerate money printing. Congressman warns of Obama creating secret security force, armed security force, that's actually in the Obamacare bill. And then the media is like, oh, he would never do that. They've already set it up with mercenaries with top security clearances guarding federal buildings now. And then the billions of bullets and all the training and the rest of it. I mean, this is just simply amazing. And then some of the other news, countdown, U.S. hits debt ceiling in 84 days. And again, Obama said raising the debt does not raise the debt, only not raising it. That's the only thing that is financially irresponsible. We have a bigger debt than we have yearly GDP. We have a higher debt to savings ratio than Spain and Greece that are both completely bankrupt. And their answer is get us deeper into debt. Why not? The globalists want us impoverished. And if Rand Paul wants to cut the defense budget, he's a traitor. And if Ted Cruz wants to cut some of the corporate welfare and entitlement welfare, oh, he's a horrible person. You can't continue to do this and have 101 million people on food assistance and 100+ million people on government dole. There's more people on the dole now than in the workforce. Let me say that again. What about the people going bankrupt everywhere? What about the people losing their houses? Well, the folks that have been not working for 5-10 years, they go, I don't care. Tax the rich. It's the ultra-rich lobbying for that against the middle class, their historic enemy, to bankrupt the country. Once they've done that, you're all going to have your welfare taken away. Here's an article, China to ease one-child policy. That's because it's caused such a problem, having upwards of, 60, 70 more million men than they have women. And it's causing all sorts of societal problems. And India is about to outstrip them in population. And they've ended the labor camps. That's being reported by Reuters. China unveils boldest reforms in decades. Shows that the new president is in command. Folks, they don't need labor camps anymore because they call them jobs. And you go in their suicide nets and they force drug you and forced abortion. And you're basically locked up at night. And they just don't call it labor camps. And don't worry, China is now on the UN Human Rights Board deciding what's human rights, along with Cuba. Along with Cuba, oh, it gets better. Saudi Arabia is probably a bigger tyranny than China per capita. The only thing worse is North Korea, and I expect them to be made, the head of the UN operation. So that's just some of the news up on Infowars.com, up on Prisonplanet.com. EPA blocks cities from installing fire hydrants. Again, the EPA is shutting down over 500 power plants. Bloomberg reports Philadelphia has 119 fire hydrants that cost about $2,000 each, waiting in a warehouse to be installed, yet they sit there in dry dock because federal regulators say their fittings might taint drinking water with lead. Yeah, the last lead smelting plant in the U.S., it's a very important metal for a lot of industrial uses, it's been shut down, so you can't even get bullets. But they allow lead in the food from China, just no lead in food produced here. And I'm talking microscopic amounts you can't have here. You can just ship it in at thousands of times that. Again, everything is meant to shut us down. Shut us down. Shut America down. Because remember, the globalists, they're all above the law. They're all exempt. This is what their neo-feudalism is. Under a technological tyranny, a technocracy. And that leads us now to our guest who'll be with us for the balance of the hour. And then the top former Secret Service agent, he was the head of operations when the president would go overseas, Dan Bongino is going to join us with a lot of key intel at the start of the next hour. And then we'll take phone calls the last 30 minutes or so, I promise. But Patrick Wood, I was familiar with his writings and work from newswithviews.com and other places, but I heard him for an hour on Dr. Stan Monteith a few nights ago. And I've read The Technotronic Age. I've read The Anglo-American Establishment. I've read Quigley's books. I've read Brzezinski's books. I read Council on Foreign Relations publications. And so I knew everything he was saying was accurate, but he knew stuff I didn't know, and I went and looked it up, and it was accurate. So I wanted to get him on because he is an editor of a weekly financial analysis service, Findings and Forecast. He has studied elite globalization policies, which you need to do to understand economics, since the late 70s when he partnered with the late Anthony C. Sutton, who was a listener and been on the show, to co-author Trilaterals Over Washington, Volumes 1 and 2. He remains a leading expert on the elitist Trilateral Commission, their policies and achievements in creating their self-proclaimed new international economic order. He is also a leading expert on historic and modern technocracy, which plays a prominent role in current world affairs. That says it, lightly. An economist by education, a financial analyst and writer by profession, an American constitutionalist by choice, Wood holds a biblical worldview. He has a deep historical insight into the modern attacks on sovereignty, property rights, and personal freedom. Such attacks are the epitome by the implementation of UN policies such as Gen 21, sustainable development, smart growth, and in education, the widespread adoption of Common Core, 2 + 2 = 5. His current research builds on Trilateral Commission hegemony involving transhumanism, technocracy, and more, and how these are co-opting economics, politics, and religion, which together represent the major pillars of society. Yes, they're taking over all sciences, philosophies, and re-engineering them, and I appreciate him coming on. We're going to skip this network break because I'm behind. This is such important intelligence, so stations shouldn't be skipping this break. It's a network break. We're going to do this because its time is important. AugustForecast.com is his site, and he will be here frequently. There's so many amazing minds out there that we just tend to forget in our rush. And Anthony Sutton, of course, advised Congress, discovered all the documents at the Ford Foundation and others with Patrick Wood, was a top congressional advisor on the plan to convert America to a tyranny, how our government funded Stalin, Lenin before him, Hitler, didn't run them or control them, built them, just like Saddam and Al-Qaeda and all of it. And to understand this scientific tyranny, the application of dehumanization, we give you probably one of the greatest living experts. Because I went and looked into him. I'd seen his writings. I was like, I forgot about Patrick Wood. Why has he never been on the show? He might have been on. I might have forgot. But I don't believe he's ever been with us. And it's just so important, a treasure trove. The reason I'm building this up is you need to understand this is your world. This is how it really runs. These are the guys that in Congress got the documents and went to the Canadian archives and got the intel to put out the intel and to post the documents on their websites. I had Sutton on about 17 years ago, and then I tried to get him on a few years later, and he said, I'm sorry, I'm too ill, but I appreciate your work. And then he died like a week later. I couldn't believe he was like on his deathbed and was sending me emails back. So I just really admire his work as well. And we need to remember these men that have fought so hard. Mr. Wood, I know it's probably annoying having me gush over you, but your intel is so vital to the preservation of human dignity.
Well, thank you, Alex. I appreciate the opportunity to get some of this information out. I've been trying hard, as you know, and I always enjoy doing radio and TV interviews whenever I can.
Well, let's do this. Let's say you're talking to a new audience. If you had 5 minutes on national TV, which this basically is now, 3 million people right now conservatively watching and listening, how would you introduce it to laymen? Because my listeners are very smart, very informed, but they always want to give stuff to their family. And so they want it crystallized. Give us the basic overview and then get into the nuts and bolts of technocracy.
Well, it's really it's a complex and a deep topic, but basically the first idea is this. The problems we've been having in the last 35 to 40 years especially have been economic in nature rather than political. And there's a lot of emphasis in the public, like in the Tea Parties and the conservative movement, and even in liberal circles as well, that the world revolves around politics, that is arguing in Congress and, fighting with the executive branch and so on. And my studies on the Trilateral Commission have pretty much pointed out, I think with great detail, that the takeover of America has been economic in nature. And that was the nature originally of the Trilateral Commission. It was formed in 1973 by David Rockefeller and Zbigniew Brzezinski. They said frequently that they were going to create a new international economic order. That they used that in every one of their early publications. We didn't really know at the time exactly what that would look like, but we had a pretty good idea from reading the policies. And they have managed over a period of now, since 1973, some 35 plus years, to create this new international economic order. And if we look around, this is what we see today, Alex. This is what's important to realize. Back then, people criticized us for being conspiracy nuts. Today, we have the force of history behind us, which after a 25-year period, of course, becomes history. We can now look back at history and see that what we said in the 1970s was exactly right. This is exactly what they've done. We know that the world system today is broken, almost beyond repair. And we have to put the finger where the finger belongs, and it belongs with this very small elite group of internationalists that were represented by the members of the Trilateral Commission back in 1973, and ever since, I might add. And they have influenced our government, the executive branch of our government especially. They have influenced our government to an extreme that has literally excluded the American people altogether. We have no control over Congress anymore, it appears. And the executive branch is just going to do what it wants to do. So there's been a fundamental change in the political system in our country, for sure. But the political system was really just useful idiots for this elite group of economy changers, if you will. They had to use the political system to get what they wanted to do economically over these last years. And so we see things like the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, CAFTA. We see the Trans-Pacific Partnership being negotiated right now that is hopefully not going to get put through on fast track, but the administration is trying to get fast track authority established again. So, this hegemony has continued from 1973 to today, hasn't let up. Nobody has identified these people behind the scenes. Nobody has, even politicians will not write about them or speak about them. In fact, I think the only living politician, living or dead, that I know that ever talked about the Trilateral Commission was Barry Goldwater when he wrote his memoirs with no apologies back in 1979. So this group is not talked about. These people are not talked about. We've been writing about them since 1977, really. And nothing has changed. They're doing the same thing today they did back then. I don't know how else I could summarize it in a very short period of time, Alex.
Well, you've done a great job. In fact, I'm going to pull up the Barry Goldwater quote with no apologies, where he describes how it's an economic takeover. We're designed to fight a Stalin, a Hitler, a Mao. We see a foreign enemy. But when it's corporate and regulatory and incremental, and it creates a global group of less than 100 corporations, in Rockefeller's own words, he's written New York Times articles bragging about it, how they want centralized control and how they divide up the world. U.S.-based companies get the toll roads in Spain. Spain gets the toll roads over here. It's where they divide up the world amongst themselves and then bring in a technocracy to be able to control the population scientifically, where it's impossible to ever get out of it or even know what you're in, and you dumb down the population. So I want to walk through what technocracy and the technotronic age is, what they're doing with it, because, I mean, as best I understand it, it is the Cecil Rhodes plan of 1900 and the British royalty and their empire that was in trouble. They said, we'll go corporate, take down our flag, but use corporate energy to still control these holdings that we once had, like India and other places. And at the same time, we'll export this corporate plan and team up with other robber barons in the United States and Europe. That's what Bilderberg later became. But their philosophy comes out of eugenics and Malthus and Galton. And so it's basically eugenics scientifically deployed through a world government corporate system, so it's very hard to fight. I want to get your take on that in a moment, but we did find the quote from No Apologies with Barry Goldwater. He says, quote, the Trilateral Commission is international. Again, the Trilateral Commission is international and is intended to be the vehicle for multinational consolidation of the commercial and banking interest by seizing control of the political government of the United States. The Trilateral Commission represents a skillful, coordinated effort to seize control and consolidate the four centers of power: political, monetary, intellectual, and ecclesiastical, the churches, from No Apologies. Now, let me break this down for folks and give you the floor. America was pretty much the sole superpower by the end of World War II, so the globalists had to create a fake bipolar world by giving weapons to the Soviets to then build them up to let us become a tyranny and then share in a backdoor globalist deal, taking over different areas of the world in the name of fighting each other in full spectrum dominance. Then they ended that farce and then moved on to the new al-Qaeda threat, which they actually ran, to use that to take our liberties. So I'm basically describing the main trait of technocracy is that it's totally amoral, except for the eugenics-based system, that it doesn't even... It uses everything, as Curl quickly said, socialism, fascism, communism, as long as it's command and control. Go ahead, sir.
Well, the book Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, we refer to it in pretty much everywhere people talk about, oh, it's a brave new world. That book was written in 1932, Alex, and it was written by Aldous Huxley looking straight into the face of technocracy that was a big movement back then. I didn't discover the technocracy movement from the 1930s until a few years ago. And when I did, it piqued my interest so much, I had to investigate and just, go crazy looking for information to try and find out what they're all about. It was a huge movement back in those days, had a big popularity, a large popularity in Canada, and especially in the West, although it did pretty well in the East as well. But these technocrats specified very carefully what they would do if they could replace capitalism. They believed in the Great Depression that capitalism was dead. Unemployment lines were, wrapping around blocks. Soup kitchens were, full, just serving people all day long. And they believed that they could provide an economic system that would be better than capitalism. And it didn't get very far. It kind of died out as a movement around 1938 to 40. But today, it's had a resurgence, if you will.
Sure, it's been adopted as the globalist management program.
It has now been adopted by the globalist management program. And the reason I say this is important, when we follow the money, back in the 1930s, the Rockefeller-Carnegie crowd were dumping buckets of money onto the eugenics movement. This is well known and well documented. They did not dump any money on the technocracy movement back then. And so the technocracy movement kind of withered and died after a period of time. However, when Zbigniew Brzezinski resuscitated those ideas in 1970 with his book called Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era, that apparently caught Rockefeller's eye.
That's right. Patrick Wood, stay there. We'll explain who David Rockefeller is, Zbigniew Brzezinski, and more. These two men, you can say more than anybody now, literally govern our civilization. We'll be right back. We're going back to our guest, and I'm really going to try to give him the floor to break down the history of this, but you hear me start almost hyperventilating when he's talking about it because I've done the research. I know it's true. I watch David Rockefeller on C-SPAN 50-something times. I read their publications. I know out of over 70 globalist organizations set up since the 30s, he set up almost all of them, or his dad did, and he's like the omnibudsman of just all of the merger, the whole plan. And then he adopted technocracy, and that's the cameras, that's the systems, that's to apply that to eugenics. And if you wonder why New York Times endorses it and why all these elites endorse it, the Venus Project and its founder is part of the technocracy movement. This is you live in a giant plastic concentration camp, basically, with a computer programmed by the elite, the megaopolis controlling your life. I mean, I could not think of a more horrible fate. But we're going to go back to our guests in a moment. Here's an example of technocracy, okay? Bureaucracy as a science of control. And notice the elites, the central bankers in the last few years have been calling themselves, and at Davos they go, we're technocrats. That's a bureaucrat with 1984 spy grids who has a eugenics philosophy. But briefly, look at this. Harvard study confirms fluoride reduces children's IQ. Out of 20-plus studies conducted, 27 studies. I always say 24 for some reason. 27 studies over 22 years, scientifically reviewed by Harvard Medical School and their top researchers and the National Research Council. This is not some side group. They said, take fluoride out as a pesticide, take it out of the water. It is giving us massive cancer and dumbing us down. It is, you might as well have a chemical weapon. It is a chemical weapon. The Nazis got it from the Russians to put it in the water. That's a Nuremberg trial. Now, it's in the halogen family. It's the bad halogen. What is the good halogen that blocks it and removes it? Iodine. But iodine, if it's not the right type, can be toxic. That's why we produced the nascent iodine, the only proprietary type that's in the unbound base with the organic vegetable glycerin from Germany. Made in America, but the corn's from Germany. Only place you can get organic corn to make the glycerin. Very expensive. The point is, this is what I take. It's incredible. And yes, I fund my operation with this, with good products. But that's an example of technocracy. Oh, the government before it was like this in the 20s said, oh, we were having all this retardation and problems. Put it in the salt. Oh, IQs go up 15%. Here's that study. Business Insider reports on it. You see, that's technocracy. Oh, let's take it out and put the bad thing in. Then everybody will behave themselves well. This product is available at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. And again, this is why the people perish for lack of knowledge. Something so simple like that. And look, even if you don't want to get our high-quality Nation iodine at InfoWarsStore.com and support the broadcast, or InfoWarsLife.com, the gourmet salts from the Himalayas and other areas, we've had medical doctors on to break it down. They don't sell it. I ought to be selling it because we got to fund ourselves. Gourmet salts have it. You definitely, folks, gourmet salt. Just whatever you do, please research this. InfoWarsLife.com has videos on it and more to explain it to you. Okay, now I'm going to shut up. I've only got him for like 25 minutes. Then we've got the former top Secret Service agent coming on who made national headlines last week with our story from InfoWars.com on DrudgeReport.com, where he said, look, it's worse than you know, but he wouldn't go further than that. I've talked to other Secret Service that say it's unbelievable. We can't tell you. Well, I'm going to see what I can squeeze out of him coming up at the start of the next hour. But going back to Patrick Wood, publisher, he's an economist, renowned, exposed the Trilaterals, co-wrote the book Trilaterals Over Washington with the icon Anthony C. Sutton, who blew Skull and Bones wide open with Charlotte Iserby. He joins us. Okay, so get into, we got up to Brzezinski, who he is, who David Rockefeller is. Tell us, explain technocracy, and then what's happening in our world. Americans know not to like communism. Well, explain what technocracy is. Communism by the elite, by another name, with them offshore exempt from it. Patrick Wood, break it down.
Well, when I discovered technocracy as a historical study a few years ago, it really piqued my interest, and I said I had to go and research it in depth. And I made some, several trips to secure original research on technocracy. I found out that it had been skipped in the history books primarily because at the time in the 30s, Randolph Hearst got so hacked off by being used by these people that he sent a memo out to all of his newspapers around the country and told them basically, if you ever mention the word technocracy again, you are fired. And so there was no more articles on technocracy after that time, really. And so it was a little difficult going back and getting this information. But after I studied it enough, it really occurred to me that I needed to go back and read Zbigniew Brzezinski's book again in light of technocracy. And what I found out was, Alex, is that his writings lined up philosophically and, idea for idea sort of thing with the doctrine and dogma that was presented in the 1930s. It was very radical back then. In fact, one prominent technocrat wrote a book, a public book, suggesting that President Roosevelt should declare himself dictator after his election so that he could implement technocracy back then. We can be thankful that he didn't take him up on that, but life might be different today.
Yeah.
But when I went back and read Brzezinski again, I was shocked to realize that he was basically saying the same thing. And here's what's kind of ironic or strange. Brzezinski was at Columbia University at the time. Well, in 1932, technocracy as a movement was also housed in Columbia University. Even though the movement got kicked out, all of the professors that were part of it stayed on at Columbia. Many of them died there in their positions, retired and passed. And so here's Brzezinski picking up the trail at the same university where it left off, basically spouting the same dogma. One phrase in particular from his book, one quote, I'd like to read it just because it will just stand your hair on end, that Brzezinski understood this, but even back in 68 to 70. And I'll have to be the first to admit, Brzezinski was a brilliant man. I don't agree with him on anything he really did or said or wrote, but you have to give him credit for being a brilliant guy. He foresaw the future back then. Of course, they went and manufactured the future after that. But here's what he wrote. The technotronic era, and that technotronic, by the way, is a knockoff for the word technocratic. So he, quote, again, the technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date, complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities, close quote.
Now, I remember that book being on the bookshelf when I was a small child, and by the time I was 10 and was able to read good, I tried to read it and didn't understand it, but I sat around the kitchen table hearing all this from my father growing up, and that's the internet. That's all of it. It was all built and designed to be this grid. So they've built a society to control us, and that's the nanny state. That's the close the green belt for no reason and control people. Set up checkpoints. Tell your kids they can't play tag. Say the state rules your kids. This is putting a grid in the name of keeping us safe in that's actually a grid of tyranny and control.
Well, it's interesting that the documents from the early 1930s specified what needed to take place in order for technocracy to survive or to be implanted. One of the things, because technocracy was energy-based, one of the main tenets of their philosophy was that the price-based economic system was going to be discarded. That was capitalism, of course, and it was going to be substituted by a system of energy credits or energy currency that would be used to monitor all exchange of goods and services in the economy. And a carbon-based currency, we haven't seen that, of course, quite yet, but we see the push for carbon-based everything around the world. This is what sustainable development's about. This is what everything green is about. This is what Agenda 21 is about. You get the idea. It's everywhere today. And in fact, there are actually articles out in the last 5 years that are openly discussing carbon currency, but it's really in kind of still in a minor
That's
mode.
right. And in England, they show the school kids a cartoon called Megaopolis, where the computer tells you when you can go outside, it tells you when you can eat. Everyone has their job in the technocracy. You're only allowed to have one child. This is the plan. So for folks out there, it's fun to know about football and what size, jockstrap your favorite sports person wears for whatever reason. I'm being sarcastic. But that doesn't matter. That's a diversion. You read these books written in the 1930s, by Aldous Huxley, whose brother was a eugenicist and went on to found the transhumanist movement and head up the UN, UNESCO program and Agenda 21 and all of it that came out of a meeting in 92. You really see it's all the same control freak scientific dictatorship system under different names. It's just that the brilliantly evil Brzezinski, who believes in things beyond good and evil, foresaw the gestalt and got the real world manager, David Rockefeller, behind it. Because David Rockefeller, if you had to say one guy's king of the world, you'd have to say it was David Rockefeller. Not so much now, but he was the prime mover working 18 hours a day to bring this world government in. And now his people are in place everywhere. And he chose the Brzezinski model on record, and then he integrated it with eco-science eugenicist model, the injections and the additives to dumb us down. It's all White House science are on record. And you realize this is their military battle plan assaulting us. And they think we're so dumb that we wouldn't get this and warn people. And the elites comments to me when I've talked to some of the high-level people, and I mean head of the Kissinger group on record and others off record, is, Alex, the public can't even understand you. You're one of us, even if you don't know it, and you're going to grow up and see that. I'm going to grow up and see that and block development in the third world when that would actually reduce their population, what you claim you want. I've got to see that when you're busy funding al-Qaeda to then blow stuff up to take my rights. The point is they claim it's all scientific for the better good. at the bottom of it is really an authoritarian lust for dehumanization. And I want you to continue with your presentation and all these slides you sent us for the TV viewers, but continuing to get into their plan, studying them, and working with Sutton on their larger plan, what would you say their real philosophy was? I mean, in just 10 words or less. I mean, what is it? Neo-feudalist? Just haters of humanity? Control freaks? Who are these people?
Well, they're driven by money. They're driven by a lust for money. They sought to create a new international economic order in 1973. I don't really think that game plan has changed. It's still an economic issue. It's still about profits. It's still about manipulation of the markets for their good. They would press out competition, and they have pressed out competition over the decades. So it's still, they're still looking to make as much money as they can. They have little regard for the amount of money that you and I might make. In fact, the original model of technocracy from the 30s did away with private property altogether. We see this theme picked up in Agenda 21 documents, by the way, that private property is out. And
well, sure, they want a post-industrial world. They want to make us poor, in their own words, as a tool of control.
Well, essentially, what they want is just all of our production, Alex. And, you know, if you go back to the feudal world, the Dark Ages, it was very dark. And you look at people back then, they were mostly farmers, agrarian, but they were productive. They were able to grow things, and the land yielded stuff. It's just that the lords of the land took 90% of everything that they grew, or the animals they bred. They were not allowed to keep anything except for just what they needed to stay alive. And this is kind of where we're going. They're still looking at getting the output of our hands, if you will, the output of our production. But they want it for themselves. They don't want to share it back with us. So even in the end, that's still a very economic oriented.
You're right. And they use our energy to build their little castles in the sky for their power trip. So it's robbing our destiny. Continue with your presentation.
That's exactly right. So Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote in 1970, again, in Between Two Ages, and I quote this, he said, "The nation state as a fundamental unit of man's organized life has ceased to be the principal creative force. International banks and multinational corporations are acting and planning in terms that are far in advance of the political concept of the nation state." Close quote. That says a mouthful, but this also has not changed. This philosophy of this elite group has not changed since Brzezinski wrote that in 1970. And they believe that the nation state is basically just not compatible with reality, and they are acting as if it did not exist. So as they move forward in the world, and in China, in Europe, and of course in other, India and other minor countries, and especially in North America, as they have moved forward, we can see their fingerprints and their footprints all over the economic scene, and they have used co-opted the political mechanisms to achieve their new economic order pipe dream.
Well, that's right. Instead of an economy based on whoever has the best innovations, who's the most honorable, it becomes who is the technocrats, who is in control. And then they're tax exempt under globalism and have diplomatic immunity, and we are just crushed by total surveillance, which is their plan.
You know, I would. You're old enough to remember some of the old green people from maybe the 60s and 70s with their long hair and so on. If you can find one of those original green people today and talk to them about the current state of the green movement, you'll see them spitting molten nails because they believe that their movement was taken over by these people, the Rockefeller crowd and so on. They were given a lot of money. Then they were told after they had the money, well, you're not managing right. We need to send in our managers to manage your organization. And basically, the whole green movement got hijacked by this group and now has been turned on us, of course, showered with money, but it has been turned on us to bring this green agenda to bring in an energy-based society. And as an economic system, I can't stress that enough because that's what smart grid is all about, for instance. That's what cap and trade is all about, for instance. That's what global warming is all about, for instance, with Al Gore, excuse me, being on the front of every publication almost that has anything to do with global warming. Al Gore was a member of the Trilateral Commission, still is.
That's right. Stay there. We're going to come back with our guests to break this down. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. You can follow us on Twitter. You can check out Patrick Wood's site, augustforecast.com. Alex Jones here. And I want to tell you, here's an example of how the propaganda is 24/7. I was in the coffee room this morning watching MSNBC monitoring state-run media, and they were promoting the end of the earth because of the hurricane or the typhoon that hit the Philippines, and saying Al Gore was right, we've got to do the carbon taxes, that will save it. And then just now during the break on CNN, they're worshiping Ted Turner, and his far-reaching impact was the headline, and how he is saving the earth. I mean, it's just never ending. Let us run the world. We're saving you. And then meanwhile, Ted Turner, David Rockefeller, all of them are on record supporting an 80+% population reduction. We're joined by Patrick Wood. He sent us amazing documents today. If you're a TV viewer, we've been putting these documents and documentation and quotes up on screen. We've got him till 5 after next hour. Then we've got the famous Secret Service agent joining us with Inside Intel. But Patrick, in the time we've got left in this segment and the next, and I want to have you back very soon, get into their philosophy, eugenics, how it ties into the older globalist plans, and all the other key points that people need to know about technocracy, the system that we're going under right now.
Well, we haven't really broached the subject of transhumanism, and I don't know that we have time to do that. But
we'll start getting into it.
The Rockefeller crowd back in the 30s, the 1920s and 30s, poured a lot of money into the eugenics movement, and it was a very big movement back then. It's kind of been buried, especially buried since World War II with Nazi Germany's experience with eugenics. Kind of been a taboo topic and hasn't been discussed much. But,
yeah, they call it implementation by stealth. That's their official policy.
Well, it is now, for sure. And back then, though, since there wasn't a lot of money poured on top of technocracy incorporated, eugenics was not really part of their agenda, not directly in any case. Some of their members were obviously influenced by the eugenics movement back then, but that was not really an official part of their platform, if you will. They were very economic in nature. They were focused on creating an economy that would be balanced, that would be free of poverty.
Exactly, but David Rockefeller wants to use it to carry out eugenics. He wants a computerized, weaponized system to dehumanize.
Well, yes, we can see the dovetail in modern times where eugenics is an undercurrent that's starting to kind of come back to the surface in this. Transhumanism really brings this out. Transhumanism and technocracy are like Siamese twins joined at the hip, if you will. They're both based on scientism, the philosophy of scientism. And transhumanism basically sets up a society of the haves and the have-nots, again, based on genetic modification. And so those who were genetically enhanced, if you will be the haves, and the rest of the people who are not genetically enhanced, maybe they won't be as smart, maybe they won't be as strong or athletic or whatever, they will be the have-nots. And, basically we'll end up with a eugenic system that can be controlled by push button rather than by edict, as it was during Nazi Germany.
And then people will beg to be enslaved by the new genetic modifications in the toxic environment when it's really a Trojan horse backdoor of control. That's how they always sell it. Absolutely on target with your research. And, of course, as you said, Huxley was one of these transhumanists before it even had the term, and his brother founded that movement when eugenics was given a bad name on record. We're going to come back in 60 seconds, give you 5 more minutes to get into other tidbits. We'll definitely have to have you back in the near future. Third hour coming up, Infowars.com. All right, final segment with the man that heads up AugustForecast.com, the amazing Patrick Wood. And I tell you, next time I'm out of town, because then this excites me so much I won't shut up, but I'm adding important info. And like David Knight does the show. He's a smart engineer, knows about this stuff. You ought to have Wood on for like 2 hours. So the next time I'm out of town or the next time I'm not doing the show and I have Knight doing it, I want to get Wood on for 2 hours. Patrick, what have we not covered today that people need to know about? I think it's important that suddenly the globalist, the new term they use is technocrat. I mean, they're really trying to make that sexy. And, you know, it's not surveillance that they watch everything we do. They're watching it to make the economy better, but really they're just giving it to the insiders.
Well, you know, the spooky thing is, let me read you two of the official requirements from the 1932 document called Technocracy Study Course. That was their Bible of the day. One said, quote, provide a specific registration of the type, kind, et cetera, of all goods and services where produced and where used. The next one says, provide specific registration of the consumption of each individual, plus a record and description of the individual. And Alex, this is exactly what the total surveillance society is doing to us right now. They're collecting all of the financial records as well as any other profile or psychographic information they can get, so they can slice us and dice us economically, if you will, and put us in, you know, maybe pigeonhole us politically as well. You know, there are threats to their system, but this is an economic movement to try and extract the maximum amount possible from individual consumers. It's very consumer-centric, but everything is focused on collecting this information to make this system work. This is the last piece, according to the original documents of technocracy, that needs to be put in place before technocracy can actually be enforced. And that's why I'm really concerned today about this total awareness society business, because when they get this in place completely, somewhere in knowledge is power, of course, there's going to come a time when they can flip the switch and basically say, we're now in control, and now you will do what we say.
That's right. It's a total military takeover. The smart meters controlling how hot or cold our house is. The satellites not letting us cut a tiny tree in our backyard. Just absolute bureaucratic hell. And then the robots get rid of the regular jobs and the farming. So literally, like a Kurt Vonnegut book, their plan is to have 1/3 of the population as enforcers, and they're going to hire the people they poisoned through the eugenics operation to literally rule over those of us that are informed. So it's not even the eugenics that they've claimed they're building.
If somebody wanted really to feed the world, what we need to do is increase the CO2 content in the atmosphere by 10%.
That's right.
It would feed the world in a heartbeat. But when you take CO2 out, plants can't grow, crops can't thrive, and people starve. I would endorse a real open market, free, open source technocracy that empowered and had us go to Alpha Centauris. But this technocracy is a bunch of bean-counting communists adopted by robber baron eugenicists that openly are using it as a weapon system. And so we've got to point out technocracy is what's delivering the poverty. It's the enemy. It is the enemy. And the people who have brought us technocracy are the enemy as well. I wouldn't really lay the blame necessarily at the feet of congressmen and senators, but, you know, because they've mostly been useful idiots and not really knowing what they're doing. But if we look behind it to these people who have brought us technocracy, this is where the trouble is. And if we don't get rid of those people and get them out of our government system and get them off our back, they will not be stopped, and we will never be satisfied. You know, how much water can you squeeze out of a sponge? This is what they're doing to us. And the only way to get more water out of the sponge is to wring it harder and harder.
That's right. That's the plan. Patrick Wood, AugustForecast.com. We're going to be talking to you soon. Folks can find your great work right there. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Alex.
And then all of that NSA data, grabbed illegally, can be used as top Secret Service agent, now retired, Dan Bongino, has told the public. And he quit a few years ago because he said he couldn't be around the un-American, anti-free market, you didn't build it garbage. And he said, look, I can't tell you what I saw behind the scenes, but it's worse than you know. And that article that we put out last week with the video of him talking about it went viral via drudgereport.com. And we're on the great site Drudge all the time, but I mean, this thing went viral. 3 million readers on our article alone. It got syndicated everywhere. No way of knowing how many. It really touched a nerve with people. Obama's Secret Service agent, it's worse than people know, and I'm not trying to scare you. We only got 10 minutes with him because he's in a gear up for his book about to come out, but he's on for like an hour when it does come out in a few weeks. Dan Bongino, Bongino.com. He's running, obviously, for higher office. We'll tell you about that briefly, but in the time we've got, come on, tell us. I mean, I know you're already getting threats. You're getting your office broken into. Stuff's going on. I think not telling us is going to put you in more danger than telling us. What is it that's so horrible, that's worse than we know, worse than we think at the White House? You were the head guy that ran his foreign trips. We know that's the most important position in the Secret Service because that's seen as the most dangerous, is when the president goes overseas. I mean, tell us who Obama really is. We've got Harry Lennox coming out saying he's basically an actor and that he secretly trained him 18 years ago. Dan Bongino, what's really going on here?
Well, here's the deal, Alex. You even have new things coming out with the financial monitoring, which we're seeing today with the agency, the CIA, with financial transactions overseas. So think of the picture right now, the government, this big government mentality, big government president. They now have your emails, allegedly just the subject and headers and the to and from, which I strongly would debate. They now have consumer financial data from any transactions you may have made overseas, and the consumer financial relations board right now, they're internally, they're developing a whole profile of credit card company data as well. So we're getting into this society right now, the surveillance society, where, as I said on that clip, which got something like, I think even the YouTube, about 400,000+ views, you're in a society now where your life is really no longer your life. It's your life, which is available for public consumption at the government's behest. They have the key to your personal and private life, which I find really frightening. And when I said worse than you know, that's exactly what I meant, because here's what's really bothersome about this whole thing, Alex. It really doesn't seem that anybody's really that disturbed about it, besides, folks in the libertarian, I think, wing of the party that are raising the flag here. But, like I said, last time I was on the show, I had a bunch of your listeners jump on and follow me, and they're really active, and they're really getting involved and saying we want answers. And
well, specifically, I talked to a Secret Service agent, and this is pretty unbelievable, but it's true. I don't even like saying this but I mean, he didn't give me anything secret. He just said, keep doing what you're doing. It's horrible. Almost all of us are freaked out. It's unbelievable. Obama is basically worse than you're even saying. I heard this about a year ago, and then from another Secret Service agent through another person I know. And I mean, they wouldn't even talk to me except through somebody else's phone. Right. And then one of them passed a message on to me, and they said, look, you're right, it's bad. I mean, what's going on? I mean, we know Hillary had like crack pipes on the Christmas tree back in the 90s and like Mao Zedong. We know 7 of the czars publicly praised Mao Zedong, the greatest mass murderer in history. Tell us, like, you said you had to quit. It was so horrible, but you can't tell us. I mean, tell us what Obama's like. Well,
listen, I don't want to get into his personal stuff because it would be inappropriate. I mean, they did take an oath, but I feel the need to sound the siren here because, the Secret Service, there was some hack on the Republican side. Of course, a lot of the establishment folks tend to come after me as well. That took a shot at me and my book, Life Inside the Bubble. He took a shot at me, basically saying that, you shouldn't do that because then the Secret Service and it'll damage the sensitive relationship between the Secret Service and the president. Alex, when I say worse than you know, this fog of scandals encompassing just about every cabinet agency, whether it's EPA, the HHS, DOJ, they're all encompassed by scandals. I don't have time to go into each and every one of them. Most of them are public. But even look at something like the Secret Service. They were used as some kind of a pawn in this shutting down the White House to White House tours. And you may say, oh, well, that's an insignificant thing. They just blame the Secret Service. We all inside knew it wasn't true. He just looked for an excuse. But what's to say later on that, he doesn't say to the Secret Service guys, something to the effect of, hey, listen, I want those guys, arrested for protesting or something. And they feel the need to, somehow comply. I mean, we can't go forward in a society where we're not bedrocked in some sense of constitutional law. Law by discretion and rule by discretion is no rule at all. It's monarchy. I mean, it's almost near anarchy at some point. So we can't have this. It's the responsibility of people like me, I believe, to speak out. Some may disagree, and that's fine, but sure. I'm not going to get buried 6 feet deep knowing I was part of the problem.
Sure, Dan, I don't want to know about Obama's boyfriends. What I want to know about is you said basically the anti-American, You didn't build it, socialist commie stuff. And I know you've sworn an oath and made agreements and stuff, you know, to not spill the beans on what went on inside. But there's a reason they're breaking into your office and threatening you and following your family around and stuff. They're scared of what you know. And so, I mean, it's almost dangerous for me to be here pushing you to say anything. But, I mean, what else can you tell us when you say it's worse than we know? I mean, I know Secret Service agents went public against Clinton and then even got photos out of the Mao Zedong on the Christmas tree and the crack pipes. I mean, what type of weirdos hang crack pipes and communist leaders on the Christmas tree? These are screwballs.
Well, they're surrounded by, as I said on another show, these acolytes that don't want to tell him he's doing anything wrong. And they don't want to speak up and say, you know, sir, maybe this isn't right, that we handle this. And surrounding yourself with figures that view you as like some kind of messianic figure is really troublesome. I mean, that's the kind of thing we see in you know, third world countries with these leaders. So no one wants to kind of stop the runaway train right now. The only thing we have going for us is sadly, political approval ratings right now are so bad. His power is almost being taken away, his de facto power, by the minute. But the administration, and I couldn't contribute to it anymore. And I was very careful to not hurt him personally with any deeply insider information. And that's what bothered me so much about some of the criticism. You know, this could have been an easy get-rich scheme, you know, Alex, and I chose not to, you know, to uphold some sense of dignity with the office. And I don't think they've treated me the same way in return. I mean, I even waited to get office detail to leave the job just to not cause any unnecessary controversy. I've been very delicate with the whole issue, and I really...
So they should leave you alone and not follow you around and make threats and break in your office?
Yeah, I mean, but there's nothing I've done unethically or anything like that. I mean, I'm running because I really feel like there's a very deep problem with we are literally in a constitutional crisis right now where the president just ignores his own fiat, and It doesn't seem like anybody's saying anything. I mean, where are you hearing it?
But what is it that being around him freaks out Secret Service so bad?
It's more this. It's not. It doesn't seem to me like anybody is willing to say, you know, like the Clinton administration, where at one point he had, you know, Dick Morris telling him.
But is he like the devil? I mean, we see flies coming out of his mouth. What has Secret Service agents literally running the other direction through the wall like a Looney Tunes character?
Well, again, only so I know. I think it's great. No, there's none of that stuff.
I'm joking. It's a joke.
Yeah,
it's a joke.
I know.
Well, Dan, let me ask you these questions. We have an article up on Infowars.com. Obamacare fix affirms Obama is absolute dictator with power to change laws as he pleases. Even the former head of the DNC has come out and said that this is dictator behavior. How can he now claim his own law? He'll decide what to enforce and not to enforce.
Yeah, this isn't the first time, though, either. You had the exemption for Congress. You had the out-of-pocket requirements he waived. You had the income requirements he waived. You had the employer mandate he waived. I mean, this is the odd part about this thick sense of politics on the side where they say, oh, it's the law of the land, and then they turn around 5 minutes later and they ignore the law of the land, which the law of the land, I would argue, initially wasn't constitutional, but as an extra slap in the face, even once they declared constitutional what wasn't constitutional, he unconstitutionally violated it. If that's like making your head spin right now, I assure you it's making my head spin too. The great irony being the cancellations that they're trying to avoid are going to be re-canceled next year with the re-implementation of an unconstitutional law. It's crazy. I mean, we're
and again, the word is, from a lot of high-level sources, this is even hitting mainstream, but I heard it from you as well, the word is they did blackmail members of the Supreme Court.
Oh, well, I don't know anything about that.
Well, you mentioned that the NSA can be used to blackmail people.
Oh, yeah, I said, yeah, of course. I mean, the NSA can always be. That's my worry. I mean, they have congressional BlackBerry records and everything. I mean, this should be a real problem for folks. And again, the NSA thing, when I mentioned the FOGA scandal, seems to be lost in this bigger picture because nobody knows what to focus on. Is it the Obamacare crisis? Is it the HHS shaking down health insurance industries? Is it the EPA bankrupting the coal industry, completely unconstitutional, you know, against the takings clause? I mean, where do we focus? And I think it's almost like one of these buckshot strategies rather than rifled slug. Just fire the buckshot, and one of them's eventually going to hit, and nobody knows where to block because there's just so much going on right now. Even the Republican Party, even the Libertarian wing of the Republican Party in Congress, nobody knows where to focus because there's just so much going on.
I was about to say, we've only got about 5 minutes left with you, but I want to get into this with you and then talk about your book and the campaign here briefly. I know you can't talk about it yet, but I was sent an advance copy, read it, total page turner. It's Life Inside the Bubble. Folks can see I have the advance copy right here. Got it about a month ago, but so we're going to talk about when that's coming out. But top Secret Service agent left because he wouldn't be dishonorable. That's all he said. He's with us, Bongino.com. Dan Bongino is running for Congress. But, sir, I want to expand on this briefly with you because you're one of the only people that's astutely said this, and I know this is their plan because I've read some of the political warfare strategies the CFR puts out, and they admit this. That's almost a plan is to flood so much corruption, bum rushing everyone, that it's almost like when criminals take over an area and break the will of the public and just set the precedent that it's a crime zone, that's what Obama and crew are doing, is just rushing to the finish line, hoping that they gain 1 million miles, and even if we push them back 500,000, they still win.
Well, that's a great analogy, the crime analogy, because in New York, that's exactly what happened when I lived in New York. And how they stopped it was the broken windows theory, meaning at some point you have to draw the line and say, you know what, you get caught drinking in public, even though there's murders going on down the street, we're going to arrest you too, because you may be the guy that's doing the shooting later on. And I think we have to take that broken windows theory to government now and say, we're not even going to accept mild constitutional violations anymore. We're going to issue congressional subpoenas. We're going to put you up on the Hill. And, I mean, what's going to happen in the IRS? Someone in the IRS who used that to go after congressional groups. Why does someone come out in handcuffs over there? I mean, this was completely unethical. You start seeing people in the bracelets walking out and perp walking people who violated your constitutional liberties, and people testifying up on the Hill every Thursday and Friday. I assure you something's going to change, but nobody's willing to do it right now. Your analogy was spot on.
Before that, you were also a decorated New York police officer, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going from memory. I can't think of a better congressman than somebody that's been a police officer with a good record, then a great Secret Service agent with a great record, who went public about the fact that he couldn't morally be there, and is now running for Congress, and is now having the entire political system come after you. When you have the rhino Republican leadership attacking you, that is a seal of approval for me that you're a patriot. Do you like the ideas of Rand Paul? Do you like Ted Cruz? I mean, tell us about, just briefly, in a minute or two, your political philosophy.
Oh, yeah. Mine's absolutely bedrocked in libertarian, limited government values. I always say to folks, they say, are you a Republican? I say, no, I have to run as one because there's a two-party system. But you're doing something right, Alex, when the barbs come at you from both directions. A guy went after me the other day, a D.C. lobbyist, former so-called Republican. You read what he has to say, a man who's profited handsomely off his insider connection. So you're doing it right when both parties are slinging arrows at you. So.
Well, look at the former head of the RNC, Steele. Sounds like, he's left of Lenin or something, to use that political paradigm. Briefly, you told me off air, it wasn't a secret, but you said the New York Police Department is really waking up to political corruption now as well. What's happening there?
Yeah, I think it was last time we spoke, I'd mentioned a lot of my friends are calling me, and they're just astounded by everything that's going on up there with all of the surveillance state in New York and some of the things you're being asked to do. A lot of people are starting to say, hey, is this right? I think it was just assumed because it landed on your desk and had been vetted through some channels that this was all okay. And people may have been automatons in the past, but that's not happening anymore. A lot of folks, even some of my friends in the government, are starting to call me. I'm sure you get some calls yourself and starting to question things that I don't think they questioned before. And I think that's going to be the unfortunate legacy of the Obama administration. Just if distrust with government was bad before he got in, it is going to be absolutely epic, and unfortunately.
Sure, so things have gotten bad, but the worm is starting to turn. Lastly, how are you concerned that Obama will try to save his legacy, get his radical transformation of the republic through? Because you're right, he's dropping like a rock right now. I'm really concerned he might start a war, he might pull something. What does your gut and what does your intel tell you about the future of Obama?
Well, it's a propaganda war. It's what it is. He started it yesterday. Why do you think he administratively and unconstitutionally wanted to turn the tide on this cancellation thing for your insurance? Because now he puts it back in the insurance company's laps, knowing they can't go reverse this. They spent 3 years doing it. He wants them to reverse it in 6 weeks. And then what's he going to say? Mark my words, folks. You heard it here first. He is going to say in 6 weeks, look what the insurance company did. They screwed you. That's a propaganda war that I would argue is even worse than some some other kinds of actions he'd take. I mean, it really, really does significant damage to the American economy, the American psyche, trust in our government. This is really devastating stuff, and it's very sad to watch.
Well, Dan, you know a lot about criminology. I've read a lot of it just because it's so interesting. Actual criminology, not just the paperback crime novels and crime history stuff that's nonfiction, but good people tend to be blind to evil because we just don't think like that and can't imagine it. And that's why a woman will get in the yellow Volkswagen of Ted Bundy, because he's wearing a nice suit. We have to learn that they're worse than we even think. And you look at Cloward and Piven and the plan to socialize things and then make us become collectivized, and you figure out it really is a plan. And that's why they're so aggressive. I mean, at a gut level, you've been inside there, you know what's going on. They know this is a plan to bankrupt America and basically get everybody on the welfare rolls.
Well, they can't not know. You'd have to not understand basic arithmetic. What their goal ultimately, and it's the Keynesian principle in economics, their goal is ultimately to make government debt the only viable debt, to take away the private sector for a way to develop capital for your business. Not to get overly wonkish, but that's exactly what they're trying to do.
No, that's it. They want a monopoly.
Right, but you can't have that, Alex. If you don't run debt, you can't issue bonds. If you can't issue bonds, then they have to get bonds from the private sector, IBM bonds, corporate bonds, stock, equities. They don't want that. They see the private sector as inherently exploitative, as destroying the environment. So what they do is they run up these massive debts, despite the economic apocalypse we're looking at, because they only hope that they crowd out the private market, and your only avenue for investment is the government.
And then they blame the capitalism when this isn't capitalism. It's crony, insider capitalism with socialism. Well, I can tell you Secret Service guys get an education in economics, but you really need to get in Congress. Dan Bongino, we'll talk to you soon. When's the book coming out?
It's available for pre-order now on Amazon, Life Inside the Bubble. You grab it, you'll get it in a couple days.
But you're not allowed to talk about it until it actually comes out, though.
Yeah, I promise.
When does it officially come out?
November 19th is the official release.
Okay, good. I think you're on that week. All right, Dan, thanks for the time, and it's always great talking to you.
You too, Alex. Take care, bud.
Wow, I like that guy. That's a real guy. I can tell you right now, my gut just says that's a good guy right there. Oh, I wish there... Yeah, well, we'll see what he does in Congress. And then maybe Bongino for president. Anyways, the point is that well, look, when the Republican establishment doesn't like him, that's a good sign right there. Look, if you care about your kids, you don't want to destroy the country. I mean, it really gets simple. And the reason the police and military are waking up is that they understand now that everybody can feel it, not just intellectually understand it, but feel it. We've got the devil looking over our shoulder. I mean, this is, the willies. I mean, I think I'm getting chills right now. I think about how evil these people are and how creepy and how bad. And, if I was in an alley and like 2 or 3 thugs were walking up on me, acting like they want to mug me. This has happened before. I grew up in Dallas. I'm the type of guy that just immediately says, what, you want to rob me? Let's do it. And then they usually back off. And I'm actually at that point hoping they do something. And it's not that I'm looking for a fight or anything. It's just that's the only time I can really turn into Ben Grimm is when I'm outnumbered. Then it's, man, I mean, it's like I don't enjoy hurting people, but I do enjoy it when they're bullies. Then it's like I want to kill them. And the issue here is it's a normal instinct of a man to not want to be pushed around and to want to stand up for justice and stand up for the individual. And I mean, look, when I was born, the Trilateral Commission had already existed for a year. And I was like 4 or 5 years old reading books about trying to read books about the Trilateral Commission, looking at the covers, wanting to be able to read them. That's why I started reading so early, even though I wasn't good at math and other things, was because they didn't let me watch TV except for like PBS and Saturday morning cartoons. We didn't watch television except, for that or maybe once a week Gunsmoke or something. Or my dad was out of town, my mom would let me stay up late and we watched John Wayne movies. But we didn't watch a lot of TV. We're talking 3 hours a week, not 6, 7 hours a day. And she'd watch the news while making dinner, a little TV in the kitchen. I remember that. My dad bought a little color TV when I was like 2 or 3 and finally just broke last year. I ought to get that thing fixed. The point is that still had it in the kitchen until about last year. It was more like a radio then by then. It didn't even light up. You just turn it on, you know. UHF, VHF, you had it hooked up to cable. But I ought to get that TV fixed if they haven't thrown it out. That's like an heirloom, man. The point is that, I don't know why I went off into that story. I wasn't telling stories about television. Oh, reading as a kid. So I would just look at the pictures in the books and read every book in the house. And they had all these books. And I remember so early looking at Between Two Ages by Zbigniew Brzezinski and wanting to read it. Then I read it when I was like 10, didn't understand it. Read it when I was like 16, kind of understood it. And I think that's why I, growing up in college and just high school and everywhere, saw everything, because I'd already read all the globalist handbooks that most PhD, you know, economics professors don't. I'm not bragging, saying I'm some smart guy. It's that this stuff is there, it's real, and you try to warn people about it, they go, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, which is a crutch for their ignorance.
We're on the march. The empire's.
All right, I said I'd take your phone calls on any subject. First-time callers, long-time callers, I don't care. 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. And we're going to go to your phone calls in about T-minus 2 minutes. Man, there is all this news I haven't even gotten to yet, but I'll be back this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m., with a Sunday transmission. It's always good. And that's a really good 2 hours, informative, because I have a day of semi-rest, if you can call it that. All I do is basically obsess over information and wish I was on air when I'm not on air. And then once I get on air, it's almost like psychologically exhausting to cover all this. The reason I was babbling about television sets and not being able to watch TV when I was a kid a lot was before I could read. When I was like 4 or 5 years old, I would look at the books and look at the pictures and wish I could read. And that's why I started reading real early, not even that good until I was about 7 or 8. And then I started reading things that I didn't understand when I was really young. I mean, let me tell you, when I was like 14 reading Nietzsche, I didn't understand it. But I understand it now when I read it. I don't agree with a lot of it now, but a lot of it is true. A lot of it's just basically repeated by other philosophers before him and plagiarized. But regardless, ladies and gentlemen, my point in getting into that whole babbling story, that haphazard story, was that those of us that have researched this know it's real and know it's on record and incredibly important and is governing our planet and taking us to a very, very bad place. And I think it's that book. I haven't read that book in over a decade. In fact, it's longer than I haven't read that since I was like 23 or something. Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era and the Anglo-American Establishment. I have read that whole book because it's short by Quigley. I haven't read the entire 1,100-page Tragedy and Hope. I've scanned through the bibliography, probably read 500, 600 pages of it, I don't know. But you read all this, and they're like, yes, we run the drugs and control organized crime. That way we control it and make sure it isn't out of control. Just like the scene in The Godfather where they're around the commission table. We're going to deal drugs, but we're going to control it. It's always like an excuse. These people are a joke. We're going to run the white slavery so we can control how many kids get kidnapped. We'll kill or arrest anybody else that tries to grab kids. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Yeah, I didn't kill, 30% of the population in Cambodia, but I funded and allowed the communists to do it. That's basically a quote or a paraphrase quote of Brzezinski in one of his books. I mean, I went and bought his book that came out earlier this year, and I couldn't read it. I mean, I scanned through the bibliography, probably read 50 pages of it. And when I went to get it, there was some trendy professor type that didn't know who I was already getting one. I was like, oh, you're reading this. And I think it's like, what's Brzezinski's new book? The 5 things, the 5 most important things, or whatever it is. And it's all written for the public, to like semi-trendies to think they know everything. But the number one deal is take down the alternative media, shut down freedom. He tells the elite, we're in trouble, just like he said 3 years ago to the Council on Foreign Relations. And it's just so frustrating to then go on national shows and they go, you believe there's a CFR. I remember being on national TV in 96, 97, 98, where they would say Jones believes there's a Trilateral Commission and believes there's a CFR. If you're a talk radio listener, you remember major talk show hosts with their kook detector saying it didn't exist. Then it didn't have any power and wasn't important. There it is, Strategic Vision, America and the Crisis of Global Power. When I was first offered a big national syndicated job for 15, 20 times more than I was making at the time, they told me no more CFR, no more Federal Reserve, no more black helicopters, no more RAND Corporation, no more military trying to take the guns. You're going to be a mainline Republican. You're going to have producers. They're going to do it all for you. You reach right through the radio. You'll be the next Rush Limbaugh. Are you ready? And I was like, I can't even talk if I'm not telling the truth. I can't go on air and BS people for 5 seconds. I can't lie even when lying would help me. I had a cop. See, I can't help it. I had a cop pull me over about 5 years ago, and he goes, have you been drinking? And I went, yeah, I had a glass of red wine. Big deal. He's like, Alex, why are you saying that? This is all, just get out of here. Just get out of here. I mean, you know, the point is that it's just, I'm not doing anything wrong. Leave me alone. I'm good. I'm a decent person. You're a decent person. You want justice. We need to be on the same side together against tyranny. We need to stick together. We need to support each other. We need to come together for liberty, folks. We don't want to do this to our kids, our nephews, our nieces, even if you don't have kids. Other people, you have goodwill for them. You know, if you knew that a bridge was washed out, you just seen a car caught in it and pulled into the water. I've actually seen that happen before. You're driving back, see other cars coming. You tell them, hey, don't try to cross there. The fire department just fished some lady out. It's really bad. It's not some goody two-shoes thing. It's an instinct to want to help people. Like, I've walked out of a restaurant before that was terrible, and I go, hey, don't go in there. Terrible service. Food tastes like crap. Now, if the place has got good food, I'll tell people, hey, man, you got to try this place over here. It is awesome. But the trendies I meet, they go, don't tell people this is good. We don't want a crowd here. We want this for ourselves. It's amazing. I'll shut up and go to your calls. Boy, I tell you, Julio is Johnny on the spot. He's reported off and on for InfoWars over the years. He's got, I think he's got his degree, or he's about to get his degree in journalism up in Chicago. He's broken a lot of big stories, and I met him up at Bilderberg 2 years ago covering it in Virginia. And Julio, I thought when I said anybody can call in, first-time callers, usually y'all can call in, I thought, I bet Julio's the first one out of the gate. And, man, he's Johnny on the spot. Julio from New York City, I guess, or maybe it's a different Julio. I was guessing it's a different Julio. I didn't look at I was wrong. I thought Julio would be the first caller, and it's not our reporter. I didn't look, it said New York. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So Julio from Chicago didn't get in. I don't know this Julio. Julio, go ahead.
No, I'm Julio from New York. Are you listening to me?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay. And I want to thank you for waking me up. It's the first time I call. I finally get through. I've been listening to you for the last about 6 months, and I've really woken up, and I've researched everything you say, and it's totally true, and I'm freaked out.
Join the club, brother.
And I want to ask you something, because you never mentioned this. Doing my research, searching all the stuff that you told me and everything, I got into health and everything the Health Ranger says, stuff like that. What's your opinion about the myth of cholesterol? Because we've always been told that cholesterol is bad for you, you have to eat low fat, and now science is saying that, no, in reality, those studies were flawed.
No. Your brain, the solid part of it from medical doctors, like 70% of your brain's water, as you know. But the part that isn't is like 90% cholesterol. Now, and it's an electrochemical computer, and I knew this from my uncle who was in a motorcycle accident. He stopped having almost all his seizures. The medication wouldn't do it. 20-something years ago, they said start eating a fish oil fat diet, and coconut oil. They knew all that. I take coconut oil in the morning. I mean, it's a brain booster. It's amazing. And they knew all this. So what's bad is trans fats and burned fat. And then all these artificial fats. But they tell you, don't get fat, eat this artificial fat, the artificial margarine, that you might as well put super glue in your arteries and veins. I mean, you might as well just shoot yourself in the heart with a shotgun eating that. So see, everything they tell you to do is meant to kill you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I totally agree. And all the sugar, you know, I'm trying not to eat GMOs, but it's so difficult not to. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Sir, they want to put statins in the water now. and statins on record shut your liver off and basically make you start getting Alzheimer's and rot your eyeballs out. Major studies, statin drugs significantly increase risk of cataracts. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it literally gets rid of the oil lubricant of your body. What you don't want is burned red meat. That is a death sentence, and God, do I love it. Oh, man, I tell you. But, but I mean, of all the natural stuff, you don't want burned red meat. But, I mean, you want fish oil, and you want fish, and you want chicken, and you want coconut oil, and you want other good vegetable oils, and you got to have it. I mean, I don't know how many old people I know that literally have Alzheimer's, which is really just brain scurvy, and they've got rot holes in their skin and everything. You put them on coconut oil, you put them on vitamins and minerals, they're suddenly back, and their doctor always says, take them off of that. Take them off. And then it's bye-bye, old person. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was listening to the show yesterday. I was on a call. I just couldn't get through. I wanted to ask the last guest about the alien theory, because I was listening to you, and you always had Jim Mars on. And then I started searching and started listening to Jim Mars, and then I stopped listening to him because I got freaked out. Because this guy is saying 10 truths, but then he tells you one big lie.
Yeah, you know, I think Jim's a really reasonable, genuine guy. He has been, as a real reporter, crime reporter, and then all this professor and everything. He's done a lot of research, and he knows. I mean, there are astronauts, footage of them going, "Oh, there's a craft outside," and then the government won't say what it is. We don't know. I don't go there because it can't be proven one way or the other. I know about the Emergency Centers Establishment Act, but I can't get people to admit FEMA camps exist when it's public. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think the Bible's got it right. There's demons and bad guys, and there's angels. And there's a good guy that runs the angels. And I want to be with those guys. Because every culture says the fallen angels like to murder babies and stuff. And historically, this stuff goes, So I don't know what's going on, but there's something to all the wives' tales is my point. And I don't know. So God bless you. I know Jim Mars very well. I think he's a really good guy. And I don't think he's lying to people. I think he really genuinely believes that there is, a lot of stuff going on we don't know about, which undoubtedly there is, but I don't go there. I don't go there because, let me tell you, if I ever see a flying saucer and an alien, I'm going to tell you about it. I promise you. My uncle, before his motorcycle accident, was walking from one farmhouse to the other about 200 yards to get another set of dominoes, and saw 3, and this is like in the early 60s. He was like 12 years old. Saw 3 craft the color of mother of pearl, just like in the movies, green, blue, orange, rainbow, with no sound, come up from behind the trees about 500 yards away. She showed me many times. Every time we walk up there at night, he goes, "You know what I saw over there?" And he came running in and told a few people, "I just saw something really weird." Who knows what it is? I don't know. People see this stuff. Every culture saw it. They've got Aztec carvings of the 747s with windows down the sides and perfect proportional engines on them that were in the Spanish Museum 400 years ago. I mean, I don't know what that is. But did they foresee the future? Did a time gate open up? I don't know. I mean, I don't cover aliens and stuff, and the media says I do. So I just don't go there. We got to move quick now. I said I'd give each caller a minute. Let's give that guy 5 minutes. Andrew in Massachusetts. Go ahead.
Hey, how you doing, Alex?
Good, brother.
Just want to thank you for your work. Also, I thought it was funny. I've called in once before, and Julio was on right before me, so I thought that was kind of a coincidence.
Might have been another Julio.
Real quick, I write for IntelliHub.com, and I'm actually helping to organize a nationwide protest. It's going to take place tomorrow, and it's called the March Against the Mainstream Media. Have you heard anything about it?
I follow routinely the Intel Hub's info. Some really good reports over there. We carry some of it, but I was unaware of that.
Yeah, so if your viewers want to get involved, they can go to mamsm.info, and they can find the event locations. Basically, we're going to go in front of studio headquarters of all the mainstream media outlets, and we're going to protest and expose lies.
I agree. I did that many times a long time ago. We would go protest local and national media. I got arrested protesting at Fox News with Geraldo Rivera. I just happened to be the guy that did a live broadcast outside, so we took advantage of it. Nothing against Geraldo. He's a listener of the show and comes on and stuff. But that was obviously before that. But I think it's a great idea to point out there's state-run media. God bless you. I appreciate your call. We'll look into that and maybe post something on InfoWars about it. Rob in Oregon, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Alex Jones, hey, real pleasure to talk to you. I know you don't like thanks, but you need it and you deserve it. And kind of embarrassed to say was one of those guys that football was kind of the biggest deal, and all my buddies, fantasy football rules their lives. It's pretty sad.
They ought to be in like fantasy business development or fantasy manhood.
How about fantasy world?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing. But all these guys who wear jerseys around and just put these guys in the spotlight, they all have a goddamn, all have an Alex Jones jersey on. It's just amazing to me. But I had a question about getting a CCP in Oregon. I'm going to do it. I'm not a big gun guy, but I've obviously listened to you. I'm well prepared now. Is there some sort of, is it a good idea to get on that list? Am I going to be a target if I'm on that list?
You halfway waive your rights of something that's already inherently there, but they leave you alone with a concealed carry. And at this point, I say let them all have you on a list. Be public about everything. I mean, if it makes them leave you alone more, and I have learned with police, they know you've all been checked out, background, everything. It tends to be like this person's not a criminal card, so it has some benefits. I mean, it's 6 one way, half a dozen another. But I don't know the specifics on Oregon laws. I know they're mixed because I've looked at them before, but I don't remember the specifics. But you need to decide what you need to do. We got the laws changed where they don't harass you for having a handgun in your car anymore. Used to, you only have to carry a rifle around in Texas because they would try to put you in jail for that because the law was written in a ambiguous way, just like Florida, where they're trying to change the law again. So the answer is move for open carry without permit, because criminals are going to carry anyways, or for concealed carry without permit, while working within the laws of your system to not get snared in their program. Does that sound reasonable?
Sounds reasonable. One quick thing. A caller called in yesterday, and I'm not sure if I'm on the same page here, but when I'm trying to sell this to people who think I'm out of my mind, and I don't know how you do it, you ought to offer counseling services, because I've never been more awake, and I don't know how you deal with what you know. But when I sell this to people, it'd be nice on the site, and I'd do this for you if I could, but to get like some sort of glossary, because it seems like an analogy would be you see liberty maybe at the end of this tunnel, but there's so many landmines and grenades.
Yeah, that'd be a great video game where you've got to go through the last 5,000 years of tyranny and how governments try to control you, and then you get it to more advanced forms, and then you finally get to Land of Liberty, and you learn it's about you being an individual, being honorable with other honorable people, and everybody who's honorable going after people that aren't honorable in a human intelligence network of liberty. That's what it's all about. Always reaching for more freedom, more humanity, more empowerment. Always battling tyranny. I mean, really, it's a process. And then the destination is the journey. Destination humanity, destination honor, destination good, destination God.
It's been said,
It's been a power-packed week of resistance against tyranny. The House has passed a bill to keep your insurance. Obama has vowed to veto it, while promising you that somewhere down the line, he'll let you not get your insurance canceled, while millions every few days are getting canceled, are getting notice of cancellation. And he's like, I'll fix it. I mean, it's a classic con artist game. Like a carnival where it's a rigged game or almost impossible to win. They're like, oh, don't be a wimp. Just stay in the game. You're gonna make it. I told you before it happened to be like the Nigerian email scam. I just know how they work. That's what's so frustrating. Wow, just really amazing to see that. And meanwhile, the Democrats have turned on Obamacare. The Washington Times is reporting. By the way, Adon Salazar just showed me an article he has from the new Xbox that literally, I told you it sees through all your walls and scans and maps your whole house for the NSA on record. I mean, Microsoft is the NSA. They're even worse than Google. I love how Google tattles on themselves and goes, oh, NSA spying's up 3 times, our system shows. Oh, really? It's like Darth Vader reporting on Emperor Palpatine or something. Well, now And I don't even, I mean, these are on mainstream news articles, but nobody's pointing it out. Yeah, don't show it. Don't, because it's about to show it. You can see a guy in the room with the Xbox, and you see his package, everything. It's worse than the naked body scanners. Because that's all those are, is they fire out basically high-powered radio waves, like sonar or radar, and then it bounces back, and then it gets a feed off of how they bounce back. And so it's a black and white image of everything. And so here's the big news, and we're going to break this. This is child porn. I guarantee you, that's why they've had to not scan people under 18 at a lot of the airports and at courthouses, as people started suing them, going, it's child porn, because they're saving the images. And, of course, they'll show, like, some blotchy image where they don't tune the machine right and go, oh, look, that doesn't see anything, and then lie to the public. And then that came out as well. The way to beat them on this, because it is child porn. By the way, these are group games where people can go on and dial in and do this, is what the hackers are showing in the article we're about to post. So now, by the way, they can look at your naked wife or you on the toilet or your son, your daughter. You're like, well, whatever. I mean, you know, they're not going to come in. You know, that's what the pervs want. Pervs come and look through windows. The perv government, you know, is setting all this up with a literal Imperial probe droid you pay $500 for, or whatever it is, that you go buy at Walmart, scanning your house and tracking everything you do with audio. And that's what this is all about. I mean, and they've had top psychologists come out and say the TSA groping of children is pedophilia training. So we're going to have the headline out that new Xbox will empower and enable child pornography. The new Xbox will produce en masse child pornography. And people all the time will get in. People will let them into their Xbox. They'll go into that feature. And I mean, that's incredible. And again, that's the new attitude. It's a big deal. You know, the UN's come out. The big Psychological Association came out this week and said now pedophilia is okay. Did you see? I think I didn't cover that. That was out on Monday. I think it's the American Psychological Association. I don't want to get it wrong. There's like 3 of those groups. But the big one came out. And then in the official medical book, they said, no, pedophilia is good. There's nothing wrong with it. And when you get down to it, these people are sick. Of course it's wrong. Of course it's evil. You deserve to be executed. They're not going to stop. The UN accepts NAMBLA and says they should be allowed, and your child at age 5 should be able to give consent for some pot-bellied degenerate, toothless person with a huge mustache to pick your kid up at the bus stop and then take them on, you know what they do. Ladies and gentlemen, these degenerates want you so brain damaged from all the halogens in the water you can't fight back. What I do is Survival Shield Nascent Iodine. Incredible. We have it in stock. The proprietary only brand. InfoWarsLife.com. Survival Shield from InfoWarsLife.com. And this is Obamacare right here.
How about you, sir? Step right up.
Hey, honey, let's see how good this guy is. Now, what do I win?
Anything in this general area, right in here. Anything below the stereo and on this side of the bicentennial glasses. Anything between the ashtrays and the thimbles. Anything in this 3 inches right in here in this area that includes the chiclets but not the erasers.
And if you're a radio listener, basically it's a rigged game. I mean, it's all a rigged game. And there was immigration reform ads on there, which means open the borders up, give everybody free health care, bankrupt the country faster. Except citizens. They don't get anything. But a boot kicking them in the face. Scott in Connecticut, you're on the air. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, hi, Alex. It's good to talk to you. Thanks, Ken. I just wanted to say thank you for waking me up in June of this year. And I grow all the vegetables. But here's what's bothering me. The chemtrails are, like, really bugging me. I know it's a minor issue, but it's not that minor anymore to me. You know, the aluminum and all that in it, they're spewing out.
Sir, being brain damaged and being softly, lovingly killed, killing you softly, soft killing you lovingly, is a gift of David Rockefeller. Why would you be against that?
Well, I'm not. I just know. I called up the EPA. I called up FA. Every phone call. Oh, that's that department. It was like the Chinese fire drill of phones. They gave me this department, that department. I was running around 20 departments. They don't care. they don't care.
Well, I mean, that's because we're calling it chemtrails. Like we call it FEMA camps. They're not called FEMA camps. They're called emergency centers under the Emergency Centers Establishment Act. They're not called chemtrails. They're called aerosol spray geoengineering program. But yeah, we've got to educate people. It's why we sell films that cover it. It's why I've been documenting it for 15 years. Not every condensation trail is a chemtrail, but there is weather modification going on. God bless you. By the way, here's another news article. Feinstein promotes bill to strengthen NSA's hand on warrantless wiretapping. Remember, she came out a few weeks ago and said she was upset about it and she was going to fight it. That's only to confuse idiot constituents out in California so that she can then, sail this over on them. This woman is a total tyrant, a total pig, who is just dedicated to shutting down the free press. And we need to realize what she is. I mean, she is a disgusting New World Order piece of garbage. So that's basically it. And she's laughing, folks, because you're naive. I'm not talking about my regular listeners. The woman is your sworn enemy. Let's cram in one more ring-a-dingy until Sunday, if the good Lord allows me to come back, 4 to 6 p.m. Central. I take nothing for granted. Ben in Missouri, last caller, tail gunner, as they call it.
How's it going, Alex?
I'm doing all right.
Great. Well, first, I'll just say, I think it was last Friday when you started ranting and you told the trendy punks that you were going to be piling their bodies, and that was great radio, man. That was great. I
wasn't saying I was going to pile them. I'm saying if this civil war kicks off, there'll be piles of dead bodies, and we don't want that to happen.
We don't. Of course we don't. But anyway, it was great radio. I really enjoy listening to you. Listen to you every day at work. The reason why I called is because I wanted to share a story. I was looking at the terms of service for my PlayStation the other day.
And it tells you they can spy on you. I got to say one thing. I'm sorry. Call me back Sunday. I'll talk to you. I apologize. Everybody should read their terms of service. Great point. Look at this. This is out of LifeSite News, but it's linked to AP. APA, the American Psychiatric Association, said pedophilia was a sexual orientation and was a wonderful thing, basically. Now they say that was in error. Really, grabbing people's kids out of their backyards and gang raping them before you slit their throats is not good.